I think I can hear you.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh,
I could hear the ambient noise. That is
come on, you
odd.
have to start. Like obviously.
Broken, but still good. Yeah, still good.
I wanted to say, I always get to say, "Welcome to General Geekery." Specifically,
It's a podcast.
I'm Lou,
I'm Ben.
and this is Mustache Day. So I mustache you, Ben. How does it feel joining the facial hair club? You've had a beard before, a full-on beard. Oh. Yes. Your
Meow.
future's so bright.
Meow. I need to answer that question with another question. As a longtime beard wearer,
Holy Mother of God.
does that not bother you? I felt so happy to shave this off.
I feel so naked without it, and I feel like a child, and not like I feel young. I've cut 10 years off my life. No. I feel like I'm taking a psychology 101 class, and I understand the human brain, and I'm going around campus telling everybody how smart I am. Kind of young when I shave. I hate it.
I even
Can't do it anymore.
I even bought like products. I bought like not like a beard oil, but it's like a cream that's supposed to like make like the fibers like all soft. And I was like, oh, maybe this will get rid of the itching and all that kind of stuff. Because people go like, oh, it'll itch for like the first like week or something like that. And I was like, I grew that thing for a month, and the itching never went away. I just was constantly
I don't have that problem.
doing this the entire time. So I just no. So I shaved it into a mustache to look ridiculous.
During the time when you're not supposed to touch your face, you're just doing this all the time.
I'm just in Lowe's, the one place that's open, with like 5,000 people just going, ah.
Yeah, and like anything that the hair catches and like holds onto, you're just like you're just licking your fingers.
I've got like a whole.
That's good stuff.
I've got like a whole hibiscus just stuck right here. I was like, I didn't want to buy that. Sorry, I was just looking at that.
I don't know what's going on, but if you have to do like a home maintenance project right now, I do have a leaking tap on my house. The Home Depot on your side of town has their shit together, and doesn't feel crowded, even though there's a bunch of people there. There's a lot of space between people. Lowe's, both of the Lowe's seem to be like sketchy. My side of town, I walked in, we looked around, I was like, nope, I'm out, because everyone was like licking each other's faces. It's just so weird.
There's no social distancing whatsoever. I walked through Publix earlier today, and I was walking past somebody in the aisle, and she literally like did one of these. Like as I walked by, and I was like, I'm as far away from you as I can possibly be in the aisle, but I don't know how like slightly just leaning back 6 to 8 inches. I don't know how that's really going to help.
Well, you were at 5'8". There it is.
I also didn't realize, and I didn't mean for us to launch into this, but I'm in the pod pad, the den of debate. So
argument arena,
the center of conversation. So I'm going to launch into this. I didn't realize Publix had like arrows on the aisles of like which way you're supposed to go.
I've heard that some of the stores have that. I haven't seen that yet.
They do have that in the Publix I went to, and I didn't realize that after I'd gone apparently the wrong way down one of the aisles. So, but then this creates a real logistical problem for me that makes it like one of those things that maybe I don't want to even go to that store and I understand what they're doing, and I'm behind it. Don't get that wrong. But what I'm not behind is it's like, okay, you can only go one direction down the aisle, and like the girl that bent back from me,
right?
You can't get within 6 feet of people. So that means if the aisle's not 6 feet wide and you all have to go one way, you can't pass people. So that means that you are subject to the slowest person in that aisle.
You're behind grandma.
And you're subject to that every aisle. So then, like a wave, exponentially, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So were I to adhere to the rules, if I needed something on 4 different aisles, I may be there for
12 hours,
25 minutes. If I need something on every aisle, I die there. I die of thirst and starvation.
As the founders intended.
I mean, I guess, but it won't be of COVID, I guess. So anyway.
Oh, there you go. Oh, it's sunny side. Always sunny side. I've got a fun story.
Okay, go ahead. Hope it's better than my plight of trying to make it through a local Publix.
Ah, man. You didn't ask me to bring a good one.
Have
you heard about the...
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just saying I never got to the cantaloupe. Go ahead.
Have you heard any of the apocryphal stories about the authorship of chess? about how it came around?
I haven't, but you know what? I feel like my time in that Publix was like playing chess, and I was merely a pawn and willing to be sacrificed pretty quickly. So
Did you castle?
that's I love the castle move. I'm sorry. I suck at chess. I barely know where all the pieces go, but nothing makes you feel like more of a badass than when you're like castle. Like
I moved 2 pieces at once.
yeah, I've been losing 8 moves, Bobby Fischer, but you know what?
Yeah, castle, boom, checkmate, bitch. That's not how that works.
I actually start every match with reaching out my hand going, I'm offering you a draw. It's the closest I'll get to a win, but it seems like a power move.
Well, chess is like as old as time. And
Chess
we
as
don't
old as time.
do 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 do.
Then someone castles, someone breaks. Okay, you know what I was saying.
Yep. Smash cut to our DMCA takedown from Disney. And there's a lot of stories about the invention of chess,
Right, go ahead.
right? Hard to pin down what's actually going on, but one of the variants of the story says the inventor of the chess shows it to at the time the Emperor of India, and the Emperor is really impressed. He loves chess. He's like, "This is great. What can I give you? You can have anything you want. Just ask. Unless it's unreasonable, then I won't give it to you." So the inventor says, "Okay, cool. I want rice. I want 1 grain of rice for the first square, 2 grains of rice for the second square, then double it, 4 grains of rice for the third square, 8 for the fourth square, and so on." Right? So you get through the first 3 squares, it's like 256 grains of rice. Not a lot of rice. That's not even a meal right there, even on the first row. The Emperor says, "Yeah, sure, no problem. You got it. All yours." Senses bean counters. No, what do you call a count? I guess rice counters, because he's counting rice. Sends his accountant off to go figure it out. A few days later, the accountant comes back. Says, "Hey, you sent me to put this rice together for this chess thing." He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, it would take more rice than we could grow in 100 years to fill this request. We can't do it. Like, it not only would just bankrupt us, like it's physically impossible." And the king, doesn't want to renege on a deal. Brings the inventor in, has him killed, so that way he doesn't have to go back on his deal, because now there's no one to pay the rice to. So this is something about greed. No, exponential growth is tricky. It's scary.
And it's hard to wrap your mind around. Like
Right.
when we talk about something
Think
grows
about it, like
exponentially, and you're like, oh yeah, parabola. Like I remember that. Like I've seen that on a board and stuff. But it's hard to actually wrap your mind around the actual quantity of these things. Like I think, and I'm not going to lean too hard into this, but when we think about how much money someone has, the idea of someone has $1 million or $1 billion or $1 trillion seems like step in most people's minds. But it's not. It's step, unimaginable step.
Yeah. And, again, that 8th square ends up being 2 to the 7th shifts are 2 to the 0. So basically you end up with 256 grains of rice in the first row. I'm probably off by 1 somewhere when I throw all these numbers out today.
No. Listen. I need you to get these exactly right. All right. Our listeners don't need to think maybe it was a 5 or maybe a 4. We need specificity.
From alpha to the 8th minus 1.
I say that now. I read your notes on this and I was like, there's too many numbers. Like there's a point at which reading numbers of someone who studied math. And I know you're like, I don't do calculations, but I did learn math. I did study math in higher education. And I looked at the number of numbers there, and there's a part of me that's like, yeah, we'll take a second and read all of them. And then there's another part of me that goes, you know what? No, that many numbers, and maybe this is a downfall of most people watching the news. I see that many numbers, and I go, well, obviously he knows what he's talking about. Look at all those numbers. That's a shit ton of numbers.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. Is I did all that
Especially if
work.
you use like the exponent. If you use like an e to an nth, like no. He obviously is an expert.
Yeah. I went through the whole thing just to prove to myself that I had everything right. And I was like, okay, cool. I can probably summarize these in notes. Nah, that's fine. I'll just look. I'll know what I need. No. So, it's 255 grains of rice for the first row of the board. There's 8 rows. 255 grains of rice is not even 1 meal. Like, it's not. So how fast could it grow? It goes from not even a meal in the first row. You only have 7 more rows to we couldn't do this in 100 years, right? Because exponents are tricky little sons of guns. It turns out that let's see here. The total number of grains of rice is 18 is 18446744073709551. I'm not done yet. 615. Got this from Wolfram Alpha. That's 18 quintillion, 446 quadrillion, 744 trillion, 73 billion. Now we're kind of under a Bezos of rice. 709,551,615.
I like that a Bezos is a watermark, and also you might as well just say Googleplex. There's a Googleplex of rice.
It's crazy. It's mind blowing because there's only 64 squares on the board. I pulled some numbers just from internet searches. Ricepedia apparently exists.
Oh, you didn't know about that already? I go to white
learned
Ricepedia, but there's also a brown Ricepedia. There's a
So-
jasmine Ricepedia. Listen, there's all sorts of things. I'd stay away from the red beans and rice. Pedia. Go ahead.
The Ricepedia says today, now not in ancient imperial India, today globally we produce 700 million raw tons of rice. That works out to like 460 tons of what you buy in bags and stuff at the store. But if we're looking at raw tons, because we're talking maybe a doubling, we're talking 1 square on the chessboard up or down. When you're talking a doubling, it's 1 square on a chessboard. We're talking 63 or 65 square chessboard. I'm not going to worry about doing that conversion to 460. It just doesn't make any sense at this point. It doesn't make a big difference. Sorry, is 9 quintillion better? Would it be 36 quintillion? Like it doesn't matter. Those numbers.
Right.
So 1 ton is roughly 36,590,000 grains of rice, right?
Jeez.
Roughly.
Right.
If you do that math and figure that out, you need 504 billion, 147 million, 146,042 tons to fulfill the obligation of chess, with 32,771,615 grains left over. Almost another ton.
So I'm not going to ask you to do this on the fly, but I'm just trying to put this into practical scale. So, like, for instance, like when I did, and this is like, how did you know? So, how do you know somebody's a triathlete? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Is how you know somebody does CrossFit? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Is when people used to ask me like, oh, you did like a full Ironman. How far is that? And for us here in Athens, I'm like, oh, well, that's like I swam to that road a couple of miles down the road, and then I rode my bike to Atlanta and back, and then I started a marathon. And I say that to say this is to try and put that in practical terms. That sounds like, and I'm not going to ask you to do the math immediately right here, but just give me in the ballpark. That sounds like a Grand Canyon of rice.
Yeah,
that sounds like, and actually, let me put a scale. That sounds somewhere between a Grand Canyon of rice and a small moon of rice. That's no moon. Like that's where that ridiculous volume seems to be.
Well, and that's the problem is I throw all these numbers out just to kind of overwhelm and baffle, because there's no scale that we can make this practical or we could really understand this. Like, it's just not possible because it's so massive. I started looking at universal or galactic scales, like how many number of atoms, how many number of stars. It's less than that. It's not a moon of rice. So it is less than that. But if you were to produce all the rice you needed to fulfill this chess obligation, with today's production globally, there would be 654 years it would take you at today's production level, okay, for something that wouldn't make 1 meal on 1 row. The other 7 rows get you to a point where it takes 654 years of today's rice production. Wolfram Alpha says that's 66.4 tons for every man, woman, and child on the planet at a 2018 population estimate. Now,
I think it's closer to moon than Grand Canyon.
What is 66.4 tons like? What does that even mean, right? Like 1 pound of uncooked rice is about 1,600 calories. If a random Reddit thread is to be believed, let's go with it.
I mean,
That
we're this
means,
far in now. I mean, we're not going to question like the fourth level of information at this point. Let's just extrapolate out and just assume within some sort of order of magnitude of being correct.
right. 1,600 calories, 2,000 pounds to a ton, 6.4 tons for every man, woman, and child, right?
Right.
Is 212,480,000 calories. What is that? What does that mean? Assume 2,000 calories a day.
It
That's
means
106
well, hold on.
gallons in.
It means I can swim to the road down the road. It means I can ride my bike to Atlanta and back, and then I can run a marathon.
If the inventor of chess got his rice or her rice, I don't know. If the inventor of chess got their rice, and they time traveled to today, well, 2018 population estimates from Wolfram Alpha, that person could give every man, woman, and child on this planet, foregoing themselves, I guess, 291.1 years of food for rice. 3 times like your best estimate of life.
Right, but how much pink sauce could they provide? That's the question.
I see, and that is where the genie got him. It's like,
see, that's what happened. That's what happened.
I have time now, and he breaks his glasses. It's like, I have rice now. Where's my pink sauce?
See, it's just like Bedazzled. Like I say as I start most sentences, it's just like Bedazzled.
Yep. So, and I say that to say, just exponents are fast and they get out of hand quickly, and it's a matter of just a few squares on the chessboard. You reach a tipping point where it is literally a question of 1 or 2 squares on the chessboard before you go from, oh, cool, I have a bag of rice I could eat for a few days, and I'm drowning in rice. I'm about to be crushed by rice. It happens very quickly. And when you hit that tipping point, it's too late already. You can't wait for it to get bad.
Right. You know what this sounds like, and this is not to be like depressing, but someone saying something like that ends up being like, oh, let me say something depressing, is like what that sounds like is saying, okay,
yes, and
is saying like, here's like, I just want a grain of rice for that square. Okay, it doesn't seem that bad, but it's going to get bigger, but let's just focus on that part. That's kind of like a variable rate mortgage, like how we got into a lot of these problems with houses where people are like, we're going to give you a mortgage. It's going to be like 0.001% in this first year. And then it's like, okay, well, what happens later years? Well, it could go up. It might not. It's not going to be that bad. And then it's like, oh, you have a 25% mortgage. Like, oh, we're in the 30th square, and you have a Volvo worth of rice you need.
But even that would be with exponentiation from 2, would be like 2, 4, 8, 16. Already 16, you're there. 32, you've dwarfed it. So we're talking just a few squares, right?
Right.
Like, because it just catches up so quickly. And if it's tripling.
Right, which is true. My example is variable yet linear. You are right. It does scale so rapidly.
And with tripling, it grows even faster. So that's just powers of 2. So at powers of 3, all it would take is 41 squares to dwarf the chessboard request to 64 squares, and it's roughly double at 36 quintillion, give or take a few. I'm not doing the rest. It moves very quickly, and you hit your tipping points. Once you hit your tipping point, it's too late. It's just that they're weird numbers, man. Exponents are beautiful but scary.
So what happens when you fork their rook? You see, because there's rice and there's forks. Yes. You know what? I shouldn't have to explain it. It was a bad joke to begin with. I apologize to everybody. I blame me completely.
You caught me speechless. So I'm gonna top your sad story with another sad story.
Okay, go ahead.
That's your punishment.
And welcome to Sad Stories. My name's Ben.
And my name is Lou. And
oh God. All right, go ahead.
This is something I didn't know until the other day when I was watching Picard.
Oh, how is it?
It's really good. It's really good.
I saw that they're doing, this is not a plug, this is not brought to you by, but I saw that they were doing like a month free of the CBS All Access. and
Oh,
I was really excited to see it because I also want to see Discovery. I haven't seen any Discovery. I haven't seen any Picard, and you would think, oh, he proclaims to be a Star Trek fan, but I just didn't want to pay for another subscription service. I was like,
yeah.
eventually I'll just put it on my Plex server or something like that. But given the month free, I'm like, you know what though? If Picard is that good, I might buy into it. But then I also don't want to buy into this like, but now you have to pay for CBS All Access, and then you have to pay for Peacock, the NBC
Right.
All Access, and then and we already have the ABC stuff because that's Disney All Access. But that's a little different with Disney All Access.
That,
Going
yeah.
with traditional, companies like NBC and CBS, and saying like, we want you to pay the same amount of money that you would pay for like, excuse me, that you would pay for like Fox. Or I'm sorry, that you'd pay for like HBO to pay for like Fox and CBS and NBC. I just don't think I can shell out that kind of money for that. But that said, there's no more compelling entertainment out there than wanting to see Picard, wanting to see Discovery, wanting to see Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone. Those three things are right at the top of my list of like, I don't want to pay for anything else, but I really want to see these three things.
Yeah. Picard's good. I was disappointed at first because I thought it was gonna be
Really?
I thought it was gonna be the Picard's adventure on a winery.
You just
Like,
wanted to see Picard like he's like well, I'm trying to sell these wines, but uh, uh, what year is it set? Crap, I should know this. What year is Picard set?
Oh, I honestly don't know.
Like, let's pretend it's like 3424. Like, I don't even
It would
know
be a
what it's.
3500, wouldn't it?
It's 35 something. I
I don't
guess.
know. I don't know.
Anyway, so let's pretend it's 3550, and it's like, oh man, 3550 was not really the crop I was hoping for. 3549 was a great Pinot.
Right.
That moved really well. Like, I like that you wanted to see him walk around with like maybe a dog, and they go home at night, and then they go to play chess, and they bet rice.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then he tells the story of with dramatic effect and great pull of how exponents work. And you're like, man, I just listened to a podcast about it. Those guys sucked. um, but yeah, he's they do make a wine vintage joke at the one point, but I thought it was gonna be like him hunting down, I see that pill bugs have gotten my wine. I don't know why that was like a bad, awful Connery instead of a Picard.
A little bit Connery on that.
Yeah, I don't have a Picard, but
Welcome to the Vine.
yeah.
There,
see,
I'll
now,
do a worse Connery, so your Connery doesn't sound so bad.
If the Rock took place on a vineyard, like all of a sudden. But anyway, yeah, I wanted to like
Michael Bay just throws cameras under vines and just bounces around.
yeah, I wanted to walk around drinking his Earl Grey tea hot, looking for pill bugs and trying to like protect his plants. No, it's another, um, it becomes in certain parts like a high octane Star Trek like you're used to, but very enjoyable. Like I was like, yes, Picard Winery Adventures. Maybe he'll be like a little hometown detective, like Nancy Drew or something like that, Boxcar Children kind of thing. No, oh, okay. I mean, he's putting together a crew. Oh no, okay, actually, this is really good. So I won't say more than that, but it was like a little get through the first 3 episodes, because if you get disappointed as to where it's going, you'll like it, or you'll say, no, you know what, this is way better than what Lou is an idiot. This is way better.
So I've only seen the previews, so feel free to either say yes, no, or not going to answer.
Okay.
So obviously he gets pulled from his retirement. He's no longer in the vineyards. Does he get to captain a ship? Again, you can say yes, no, or I'm not going to answer. Does he become the captain of a ship?
I'm not far enough in it to be able to answer that. Unclear.
Okay.
I think you need to watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. But I'll pull the big punch for you now.
Okay, go ahead.
This is not a spoiler.
I already know that Jonathan Frakes is in it, so, or at least in an episode, and Brent Spiner.
Yes. So Brent Spiner's definitely in it, reprising his role as Data.
Which he has some time since he's done Independence Day Resurgence, because I'm sure he probably lost money on that. So he needs to make up the fact. I watched that god awful movie, and when you told me you were like, don't waste your time with that. And you're like, if you do, just make sure you're like well into your bev. There's not enough beverages on the planet. The setup was fine, and I'm sorry to be tangential, but I'm in your chair, so I'm gonna be tangential.
Yeah.
Is Independence Day Resurgence setup was great. Like I was like, oh, this is gonna be really good. Like it's kind of odd the way they kind of wrote out Will Smith with just like one line to be like, hey, you remember your dad died? That's what we named this hangar after. Anyway, you're all gonna go fight. But Brent Spiner is so integral to the entire story, which I thought was like, oh, this is going to be great, and he's going to be such a big part of it. And,
right.
Jeff Goldblum, how can you go wrong with Jeff Goldblum?
Jeff Goldblum Explains the World is great also.
Oh, also incredible. I've got to finish all those. But the movie, after the setup, just immediately nosedives into like worse than a sci-fi B movie. Like at least sci-fi movies, at least sci-fi movies, they know that they're like, obviously no one's taking this serious. We don't have to actually work on transitions and coherency and making sure everything works. They just jump to the next thing and they're like, why'd you do that? I don't know. It's funny. Smash cut. And so they go to the next thing. Oh, Resurgence is bad. Mama's angry, and it's like Katie walks in at the very end of the movie, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's the mom of all the other." She goes, "You didn't have to tell me that. Like, I can look at this and go, that's exactly what that is. It's dumb as shit."
Smash cut to the next thing. Why? Because we can't get our way out of this plot hole.
So anyway, that aside,
so Data is shows up in Picard. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, what was the name of his inventor? Noonien Soong.
Soon. It always makes me think of River Song. It makes me go back to like Doctor Who. So
nice. Cool. But it's right.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just going to say it's weird that my mind put those things together, but I never like am able to find either one. Does that make sense? Like it just confuses me further. Like that's the way my mind works. It's like I made the connection between the both of them, but never the two shall meet. And my mind just goes
right. You just Wartrekked yourself.
They both sound kind of similar, but I'll never remember either one of them. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
I know it looked like I was stroking out, but that's kind of how my mind works. So
yeah, it's a Wartrek. Wait, these aren't the same thing. Oh crap. So his inventor is Noonien Soong. He's a brilliant inventor. That's how you got the positronic brain. Like it had to be him. You also had Khan Noonien Singh from the original series and then the reboot.
Yes. Khan.
Right.
Khan. Yeah. The Khan.
Who is also one of the most brilliant minds in the universe, genetically engineered for that. Also a great combat, poet.
Might be one of my favorite anti-heroes because he was, yes, he was the antithesis in 2, but in Wrath, but you kind of liked him.
Yeah.
Like he just kind of had you get why people follow him. Like he just seems like he's the smartest guy in the room at any time.
Right.
Montego. I was trying to think of his name. Montego. That's right. Montalban or something like that.
Oh no, Ricardo Montalban.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're thinking of Inigo Montoya.
I am. Yeah. Which one had 6 figures on one hand?
So, but it's no coincidence that their names are similar, and that they're both brilliant.
For clarification, yeah.
Noonien Soong and Khan Noonien Singh.
Right.
No coincidence that their names are similar. No coincidence that they're both really good at what they do, and that they're they're so inspirational. You could totally follow Khan. Like you get it. Like it was intentional. He wanted to make these bigger than life characters because apparently when Gene Roddenberry was in World War II and he met a Chinese pilot who we were working with at the time, befriended him. And then after the war, it was pre-internet. And then you had you had communism rise in China. Post wasn't really getting through to each other. Like he had no way to keep in touch with. So he lost contact with his friend. His friend's name is Kim Noonien Singh. So he put that name in Star Trek 2, the movie, and
The Wrath of
and
Khan.
and the show, and the
Yeah.
show, the episode he was in.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
put that.
That's
the-
right.
the-
Same actor,
all-
same character, all that was recurring. Yeah, yeah.
it was all written as some completely different name, and Roddenberry came in and said, "No, this is the name it's going to be, because this is the big character." Because he was hoping that it would get shown somewhere in China, and his friend would see it and see Gene Roddenberry's name and contact Star Trek, because he figured his friend never knew he worked on Star Trek, right?
Right.
All he wanted to do was get back in touch with his friend, and then he redid it with Noonien and Soong in Next Generation. And apparently he never made contact with his friend again
And see,
before he died.
that is heartbreaking. Think about how deep that tie is.
Right.
That you're like I really want to reach out to this person. And look at the benefit of what we have of living in the time that we do, is that we can get on social media and like find people, that I'm adopted, and I was able to go reach through the internet and actually find, who my, biological family are and things like that. This guy made a cornerstone of pop culture that we still talk about, not just talk about. I'm willing to possibly spend $9.99 on CBS All Access,
right,
to see the grandchildren and great grandchildren of the things that he built. And then that far down the line, he would probably, I'm not going to speak for him because obviously he's not here and I don't know Gene Roddenberry, but it sounds like he would have given at least a large portion of that just to have contacted and had first contact, no pun, I know, we were all waiting on it.
Yep.
With his old friend. Like, he would have given up so much of this just to reconnect with his old friend. That is incredible.
And someone who at the time, especially when the original series was out, had a massive show. He had one of the biggest reaches of anybody in the world at that time. I'm not saying he was really rich or anything at that point. I don't know how much I got him. Probably not that much. But he had the ability to get a message out very, very far. As you were saying, this is pre-internet, right? You can't just like troll around on Facebook. It's just the lengths he went to.
Something I thought was always interesting about Gene Roddenberry, because I was obviously, my dad was a big TOS fan. I was a big TNG fan. And he and I really bonded over TNG. Something I always found was really interesting. And I asked him, I was like, very early on, I was like, why do all the aliens look like us? Like, all the aliens, like, all look like humans. What are the odds of aliens looking like humans? And something he repeated that was of Gene Roddenberry. He goes, well, Gene Roddenberry said, I want all the life forms to look human so that you can relate to them. If you see something that doesn't look human, and not that they were pitted against Star Wars, but there's always the comparison, because these are the two big space drama things that are going on, at least in movies and television, it's like, well, if you see something that doesn't look anything like you can't emotionally connect to a Sarlacc. It's difficult to make that connection. But if you shorten that bridge of just going, yeah, they're Klingon, but they look like us. Yes, they're Romulans, but they look like us. To a certain extent, it's like, well, but shouldn't we make aliens look vastly different than us? It's like, no, but if we want to be able to empathize, you need to kind of make them look like humans. So I always thought
the Watcher is really the weak link.
What's that?
The Watcher is really the weak link.
Right. So it's a very humanistic approach to go, even those that are most different than us are more similar than they are different. And what he's trying to make there are connections between us and other races, and ultimately, kind of sad and tragic, him and this other person that is alien to him, of being of another country, and wanting to make that connection of, yeah, this person comes from another country, but we can be best friends with Klingons. And he was reaching out to his Klingon friend, for lack of a better term, and never was able to make that connection that he wanted to make.
And I look at A New Hope. When you start off, battle scene, it's droids. One of two is human looking, and humans on both sides. You got a guy in a dark mask, but humanoid. But it's humans. You land on a planet, find a bunch of humans. Then what? Jawas? They're kind of humanoid, but they're short. They have no faces. And like, I remember thinking, oh, they're just scavengers. They're savage.
Right.
They're not
Aboriginal savages. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're what you see in the Jungle Cruise. Like they're just, they're not humanistic at all.
Right. Exactly. And you just get that. They go right in that box right away because they have no faces. They're too short, and they're trying to rip off poor Uncle Owen, who really was kind of a jerk. But they're trying to rip him off, and you side with Uncle Owen, right? Um, then we go on. Um, we have Sand People, and it almost sounds like that's a slur, and they're just out there, they're savages. Um,
Is that what was it? What was it we said in the other podcast? It was like a tube rider or something like that.
yeah,
Like a tuber. Yeah, we called people that rode subways tubers. Yeah,
tubers,
that's
yeah,
sand people sounds like calling somebody a tuber. It's like, oh well, he used to be a tuber, but now he's a sand person. Oh, he moved out west. Oh yeah, totally moved out
right.
west.
And I don't think strap hanger is any better, but it's like they all sound it all sounds and seems dirty. And then you go into town. Um, you go to the most wretched the most wretched hive of scum and villainy,
Exactly.
and
I
it's a
was I
bunch of
was waiting
aliens.
for it. I wanted to jump in earlier, but I
Yeah,
wanted to let you have that.
yeah, it's a bunch of aliens. Once again, this is an
Right.
awful place because it's filled with aliens. So that's a really
Listen,
great point.
I was waiting to tell you this, but I don't like you either. You know that's my
I'm sorry.
that's my like maybe my favorite line in all of Star Wars, and just because it's almost comedic. It's so early on in all of the Star Wars stuff. It's 1977. We're still setting the scenes. We haven't even seen Han Solo yet, and just yet having the exchange where somebody walks up and goes, "He didn't like you." Okay, I don't like you either. Like it's so almost unintentionally
Yeah,
comedic that it's something that's said in our house almost all the time. It's like someone's like, "I don't like this," and it's like, "It doesn't like you either." Like,
I'm sorry. Oh, and if you're not subscribed to the podcast yet, get it in your feed because we're wanted men, and you want more of this.
exactly. Listen, we always shoot first.
But speaking of media,
Go ahead.
you've been watching a new show.
Yeah, I have been watching. Well, a not news show, but yeah, I've been watching a show. So I've
New
been
to you.
new to me. So anybody that knows me knows this is that I have a huge man crush on Donald Glover, aka Childish Gambino, aka the man I want to meet and possibly cuddle with. I mean, I love everything that he has done. Apparently, he started as a writer on 30 Rock and then moved into the Joel McHale vehicle Community, and then a number of other things, rap career, everything else. I had never seen Community, and that was kind of what I guess really. And the show Atlanta is incredible. Let me not brush past that. Um,
Sure.
but so I felt like I needed to go back and watch Community. So we recently just went back with our downtime, our quarantine time, watching Community, and we started right off the bat. And I remember it being like pretty cleverly written and things like that. And I really didn't have a chance to watch a lot of them. Show's really, really good. And I have some other shows that people are watching in quarantine that I need to mention to you because I also have a friend that's watching every Simpsons episode. So let us not get down that track, but we will come back to that
There's 30
at
seasons
another
of that.
time. Yeah, he burned through the first 5 in like the first day. So shout out to New. So anyway, Community is an incredible show, at least from what I've seen for the first few seasons or first few episodes. But what jumped out at me and what I was mentioning to you earlier about was one of the first episodes they have is as everybody's kind of learning to be a community together, they had to participate in a psychology experiment. And so the experiment was as with a lot of college experiments, what you think is the experiment is not the experiment. What you're told is the experiment is not the experiment. They were told like, hey, come to this thing and the experiment will start in like 5 minutes. And then
Right.
somebody comes in and they go, hey, the experiment's going to start in like 5 minutes. And then they leave. And then like half an hour later, they walk back in and they go, hey, the experiment's going to, sorry, everything's late. We're going to start in like 5 minutes. And then they just wait to see what social dynamics and degradations come of that. So as I was watching, the reason I brought it up to you is I was like, I've been in that experiment. I actually did that at UGA, but the one that we did was me and my girlfriend, who's now my wife. But girlfriend at the time, we signed up for an experiment, and it's one of those things where they're like, we're going to give you $60,
Uh-huh.
show up to this experiment. So we showed up, and it was like supposed to start at like 3, and we show up like outside of a room, and there's some chairs to sit and wait, and it's us and like 3 other couples, and we're all sitting there talking and everything else. And then a person comes by and they go, oh, hey, I'm going to run the experiment, but we don't have the key to unlock the door. I got to go like find the key to unlock the door. And then they go for like 30 minutes. And then they come back and they're like, yeah, the professor has the key, but I have to wait on the professor to get it. So they said they can be here within like an hour. So if you guys can just hang out, and then they leave. And obviously there's windows around us that it's like after a while, you're kind of like, I wonder if they're watching us through these windows. But anyway,
Right.
you sit there and you talk. And what's interesting was you got paid because you have to be a couple, and you have to be a couple of over, I think it was over a year. But
Okay.
this is in college. This is undergrads in college.
Right.
How many people are really with somebody that long in college?
Yeah.
But if you dangle $60 a person, you're like, hey, listen, you get $60, I get $60. We go do this thing afterwards. Let's go out, like, have a nice dinner, buy bevs, like, we're gonna have a great time.
That would have ended my relationship because I would have stayed there for $60. I could feed myself for a week in college. I would have stayed there like days until I got my check, then give him 5 more minutes.
Well, so we were there. I think it was going on about an hour and a half after it was supposed to start when people start going, hey, I don't know if we're really going to stay for that. And the whole time we're sitting there talking, like all the other couples, almost within like the first 10 minutes, were like, yeah, no. We're like not even a couple at all. Like we're just doing this for the money. Or they're like, oh, yeah. We like hooked up like 2 days ago, but like whatever, I'm going to do this for the money. And so Katie and I were the only ones that were like, we've been dating since high school. So like we actually sit here and wait. And then they keep coming back. And after 2 hours, all the other couples just leave. They're all just like, peace out. We're not going to do this. And so they just peace out, and they're like, it's not worth the money. I'm not sitting here. I'm not doing this. And so then they come back and they go, where'd everybody else go? And they're like, oh, they left. And they're like, oh, good. Well, that was the experiment. So here's your money. And so they hand us the money, and we're like, that was the experiment. And they go,
just
yeah,
win?
we won. We
It's
won.
like get a new car. It's like get a new car by holding your hand on the car.
It's exactly what that's like. And we left. But then I realized as I like studied
Tell
psychology.
them you want everybody else's money too. But,
Right.
They said they'd be back. They said give me their money and I'll give it to them.
I'll make sure they get that.
Yeah, I got their Venmo.
But no, we did because I studied psychology for a little while at UGA. I was minoring in it, and so I participated in some of those studies. And that's most of the studies are just effing with people. Like like one of the studies that we did, and I think you're familiar with this, is in the psychology building. There are these rooms that it's a room, but the room is smaller than the room. I know that's weird to describe. You open the door and you step up into a room, but the ceiling is low, and you step up into it. And it's just plastic walls around you and like a desk with like a dying plant and like a cabinet. And they're like, sit here and answer this questionnaire. And the questionnaire is like, do you feel stressed? How do you feel under pressure? Do you get nervous when people watch you?
Like,
How do you feel right now? And so then I got to actually participate in like giving those tests. And I was like, this is kind of mean. And they're like, yeah, you should have seen the shit they did in the 60s. Like,
right.
Actually, like
Before IRB came around.
Some of the tests were like pretending to give shocks to people. That was the real famous one.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So some of the tests were like pretending to give shocks to people. And they're like, so you pretend? They're like, well, yeah, we used to do the real thing. We used to shock the shit out of people. But then they're like, maybe we just pretend and tell them we did.
It's nuts. And it's just so, those rooms were so creepy.
They're like little prison cells.
Like it's just all you need to do is orient it so that the interviewer is sitting between you and the door to just make it like the perfect polygraph room. Like it is, they're so bad. I hated those rooms.
So anyway, we got $120 and bought some sushi. So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
All right. $120. That would get you. Actually, you don't need $120 for oil.
I was about to say, listen, you're so good at this. I was literally about to say $120 filled up our gas tank and got us dinner that night. So speaking of filling up gas tanks with petrol, I believe you have our next subject. It's bad when both of us are racing for the transition. Who can segue faster?
We're like, oh man, I got to eat dinner. I got things to do. My drink's getting low. No, I stole the segue from you because I also have the timer in front of me, so I'm looking at it.
Oh, nice.
Man, I got to cut this.
You do. It's a little different from the other side, isn't it? Shit, I got to take all this stuff that he's saying and cut it?
Yeah, so we were trading a few texts on this. Oil went below zero.
Went below zero. I didn't know that was possible.
Well, it is, but it's not all that it sounds like. And I didn't take a lot of notes on this because there were a lot of different conflicting articles, and I fell down several rabbit holes, and I said, I just need to back away. But the first thing I learned, oil goes below zero. No, that doesn't mean you're going to get paid at the pump. Like the gas station, Shell station's not going to charge you a negative amount, like credit your card, I guess, because that was for raw oil. And it wasn't just, this is the price on very specific thing.
Right.
Because there are different oils all over the globe. Now, I don't know if it's even possible to say um, invest or arbitrage into like Saudi Aramco oil because it's all royal family owned. They own the entire infrastructure. Much of the Western oil is a bit different. If you have oil production, then you have to send it somewhere.
Right.
Then it stays in the tank farm.
Right.
That tank farm usually goes to a refinery. However, there are also private tank farms that if you are an oil buyer, you can buy oil, hold it in the tank farm, and sell it to the refinery.
Right.
And the tank farm, literally their job is owning tanks and selling that service to you.
Right.
And they hook up to the pipes.
And as I understand it, that's what we ran out of. Because what I was reading was like worldwide oil didn't go to zero.
Right.
U.S. production outpaced where we can put it.
And it was one oil field or one range of oil fields. It wasn't even the whole U.S.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So all I know is that we outpaced where we can put it. And so it get to a point where I think $4 and some odd, like $4.97 or something like. I know it's for something, negative for something was the price where it was. The oil producers would have to pay $4 and some odd cents for other people to take it off their hands. Otherwise, they just wouldn't have a place to put their oil. So it was negative for something, but it was only U.S. is what I understand that to be.
Yeah, and it's just the one contract. It when it went low, it went down to negative $37. 37.
Oh, it went that far.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Once it went negative, it went nuts because it also there's lots of oil, so it's the price of that contract, and it wasn't just the price of oil from that region. What it was is that this week, Tuesday, we're Sunday now, so what was that, the 21st or whatever?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, 20th, 21st, whatever it was, doesn't matter, 22nd. That's the day the contract ends. Now, that was a contract for May delivery. If you hold this contract, if you buy the contract, then the contract closes, or the market for that contract closes in April. Whoever's holding the contract has to take delivery in May for that oil. They have to arrange for that. So that doesn't mean that's not the spot price of oil. It's not what oil costs today. It's not if you want to go buy, like, you walk up with your, 2-gallon gas tank and like, hey, can you fill this with oil? That's not the price you're going to get. So also that means if you're investing in like oil derivatives, exchange traded funds on the stock market, things like that, no, you are not getting paid for oil. Like, it just wasn't happening. It's only if you had that contract for delivery of oil in May that closed then. Apparently this is popular with anyone who's a big consumer of petroleum products, whether or not it's actual oil. Airlines will often apparently hedge their prices for fuel by buying these contracts. So the idea is that if they buy a contract for delivery of oil to a refinery for whatever product it is in May, right, they can trade that contract through April. And if the price goes up, someone's going to want that contract. So if the price trends are upwards, someone's going to want your contract. So you can arbitrage that. Yeah, in May, you're going to, unless you have private refineries, you're going to be paying more for oil or for your diesel fuel or for your jet fuel.
Right.
But you've also made some money off of the contract for the price of oil going up. So you pay more, but you caught some of it back by selling that contract. So the contracts change hands.
Do you remember the movie Trading Places?
No.
You don't? I want to say, and somebody's going to reach out and be like, you're way off base, but I'm pretty sure on this. In Trading Places, it's crap, who's in Trading Places? I'm going complete brain fart, and I'm going to have to find this. I will find it in a second. What they're trading is on futures, and what you're talking about are like oil futures and things like that. And they were trading in like orange futures, and I know pork belly futures.
Dan Aykroyd, Eddie Murphy.
And Eddie Murphy, thank you. Yeah. So, so they trade places, and it was all about like pork belly futures and that sort of thing. And what you're talking about is exactly that. That's oil futures on having insider trading on knowing what's going to happen with those futures. So it's not actually the price point. It's anticipating what that price point is going to be based on supply and demand.
Right.
So that was basically what that entire movie was predicated on, was was pork belly futures and making a ton of money off pork belly futures and basically proving that anybody could be a stockbroker or could invest in money in certain futures. So anyway, what you're saying with oil is incredibly interesting to me. Here's what it brought to my attention when you mentioned wanting to talk about this and this is a dumb question. This is one of those like Ben knows nothing. I don't know anything about the math that you were talking to me earlier. I just assume it's right. I feel smart when I castle, and I like eating rice with yellow sauce. So it's so good. Is when they were talking about the oil and how much oil we were producing and how much we could actually hold, then I thought this dumb question. I thought, but how much oil is there? And I don't mean like how much oil is produced, which I didn't know that either.
Right.
But really, my question had become, sorry, I'm changing my setting on my computer real quick. Give me 2 seconds.
Yep.
Well, I don't want the battery to run out. I only have 10%. Okay, so we're good. So what I was looking at is how much oil is there, and this is a dumb thing that like the small business owner mind in me goes, okay, well, how much oil do we have?
Right.
What's the rate that we're producing it? How much is their total? And then that last question is one that the internet's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, no, but how much oil is there? And they're like, well, we have this much at this time. And I'm like, no. Listen, internet. How much oil is in the planet Earth?
Right.
And the internet's like, we don't know.
And
we don't really have any idea. And so the article I was reading, it was a Forbes article, and it was heavily in favor of we're totally okay, even though oil went negative, because we're producing 90. Do you know how much? I already started to say the number. Do you know how much oil is produced daily on average this year?
No clue. All I know is the size of number of barrels in the contract, because that's the thing I looked up.
Right.
How much oil is produced?
93.2 million barrels of oil are produced every day.
Wow.
Do you know how many gallons of crude oil are in a barrel?
42 or
42.
160 liters.
Correct. So there's 42 gallons in a barrel and 93.2 million barrels produced a day. And so this article is like, we're fine. We've got all the oil we need. And I'm like, well, we do. And I see your rate and I see how much, but how much is left? Like, again,
right.
Small business owner, but how much is left in the earth? And they're like, we don't know. And it's like, that doesn't seem renewable, because then my question goes, well, how much oil was made today?
Right.
How much oil was made today? And they're like, well, oil is made by, fossils being compressed over millions of years. And I'm like, yeah, so it doesn't sound like we're making it as fast as it's being taken out of the ground. So I know you're getting it out of the ground at a good rate. And I know I'm the last horse to cross the line on like, hey, fossil fuels are not renewable. But just the rate at which we're taking them out at 93 million barrels a day, and they're like, we don't know how much is left in the earth. One day you're just going to go, fuck, we're out.
But you're saying like being the last horse to cross the line. But I think if you ask anybody, is it a renewable resource? Everybody could say, well, no, it's not renewable. But you're asking those questions that a lot of people don't connect the dots on, and I think that. Knowing it's non-renewable, but understanding that are two totally different things. And the phenomenon, there's a phenomenon called peak oil. It's the idea that at some point, a country, the world, whatever your aggregation group, at some point you're going to produce the most oil you've ever produced.
Right.
And then you'll only produce less after that. Is that true? It's an idea, but it's backed up by things like
I am so sorry. No. Everything just crashed on me. I tried to close Spotify because I have 6% battery left.
Ooh.
And then literally every program was like, well, fuck you. And like everything crashed and closed. So I'm very sorry.
Are you not hooked up to power?
No. I had 100% when I started.
This is less than an hour. You still killed. All right. So let's crush this one then.
I was too bright, I guess, on my display. And I had a bunch of other stuff, right? Anyway, I blame me completely.
Yeah. Well, let's crush this oil topic then, because with peak oil, the idea is you're going to get less, and we do keep finding more every year, but it's harder to get to, so it's more expensive to drill. Like that's why we have, what was it? Not Deep Horizon, the oil platform in the Gulf.
That was
Deep Horizon.
That was Deep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we have.
Not to be
horrible
convinced
accents like that.
Not to be convinced with Event Horizon.
Yes. Ugh.
Or Sphere.
Or Sphere. But They drill like a mile down or something like that, and of course there's going to be a disaster.
That is incredible to think about, by the way, when we think like, oh,
That's where all
they
the
drill
oil is
it.
going to have to be. That's what we're going
Right.
to have to do. Like drilling a mile down into the ocean is going to be like child's play. That's going to be the cheap oil in the future. So the other notion of peak oil is there's going to be pressures besides, it's not just it's harder to get to and you can't produce as much because you can't just stick an oil derrick somewhere. You have to go through a lot of work. Oil is going to get so expensive to make that you're not going to encourage more production. People are going to move to other things. So there's like this notion of peak oil is exactly what you're talking about, that the pressures are going to put a downward there's going to be downward pressures on oil production before we're even out of it, just because there's more, but it's so hard and expensive to get to.
Right. That is there. That is a barrier of entry. What I was trying to think is I was trying to think of a good practical example of what we're doing with oil and how it doesn't make sense. And and again, not to be like super like hippie or whatever like that. Like we have oil. If we can use it and use other things, fine. Let's mitigate that. Let's move to those other things. There's no reason not to use a source that we have unless it's hurting the environment, which it kind of is. But anyway, beyond that, I was trying to think of it, and the amount that we're taking out, the 93.2 million barrels a day that we're taking out, and we're not making more because it takes too long for the Earth to make it naturally. That's kind of like a
Come
kid.
on, Earth.
The way I was thinking of it is a kid with a trust fund that just goes, well, I've got all this money, and I've been taking this money out, and this last year I took out more money than I've ever taken out, and I don't
Right.
really know how much is in there, but I keep getting it out. So as long as I keep getting it out, I'm gonna keep buying BMWs. And it's like there's just gonna be one day where you go and it's like we went 3 miles down and there wasn't anything there, and it's like what am I supposed to do now? And it's like you're shit out of luck, dog.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really weird that we're just in this opposite position right now because we're producing so much for all the travel we do, planes, cars, all these uses, plastics. And um, as a byproduct of that, there's also byproducts. We release a lot of carbon dioxide when we just get the oil, when we extract it, much less, refining. But a lot of that is actually, we don't just dump it all into the atmosphere as is popularly conceived. A lot of that's used for like medical purposes. They can it. If you ever buy a tank of CO2, it
Right,
comes from somewhere.
right,
Um, so a lot of those gases that we get, not a lot of them, I don't know what the proportion is, but some of the byproducts that come out of refining of just even getting it out of the ground go to other uses. Now, if we're cutting production, those other uses, they can't get their raw materials. So it has knock-on effects everywhere.
right.
But like you hit the nail on the head earlier, like all the storage is full, and even they're now putting it in oil tankers and just floating it in the ocean, just sitting ships in the middle of the ocean, paying crews, to man the ships, um, just waiting for oil prices to come back so that they can
Right.
bring the ship in and unload it, and all the costs associated with that. It's mind-boggling. But
Imagine
the reason that,
aliens looking down at what we're doing. They're like, well, they took all the byproducts of the dead animals, right?
right,
And then they pulled it up, but there wasn't enough places to put it. So then they just let it sit on the ocean. Like on the water, no, they just put it in big containers, but then they just sat on it because there's nothing to do with it. And they're like, right. So do we even
right,
want to invade this? Like Independence Day Resurgence. They're like, do we even want to invade them, or should we just kill them?
like, and think about this: at negative $37, because once it crossed zero, it just plummeted. Um, a futures contract for crude oil is 1,000 barrels of oil. So at $37 a barrel, every contract they were paying out $37,000, and
Jeez.
they did that because it was cheaper than breaking the contract and cutting production because of all the costs involved in cutting production, layoffs, and not being able to spin them back up if demand spikes again.
That was them mitigating loss.
Yeah, it was like we're just going to pay this. It's kind of like we talked about Disney paying salaries for a month before they started doing furloughs. Um, there's just like this cost of doing business. We don't know what's gonna. There's uncertainty. It's cheaper for us to start shelling things out for the time being to keep the status quo until we figure out what the actual impact is going to be.
Right.
And just it's wild, man. It's wild.
Sitting, waiting, hoping, wishing. And I wish my battery would last longer on my laptop. So,
But
um,
it won't. So
it won't. So I've got 3% left.
play
But
us off.
this has been enlightening. I'm gonna go eat some rice. I'm going to play a game of chess and probably lose in about 8 moves. Um,
The only winning move is not to play.
that's ooh, war games.
Yeah.
So anyway, nice, good pull. Anyway, so I think that's been it. So this has been General Geekery specifically.
It's been a podcast.
I've been Ben,
I've been Lou.
and I'm gonna go charge my laptop.
Yeah, and you're not making money off of oil.
I'm not. I really. I invested
Not just
heavily.
you. I mean, our listeners. Like, it's not happening.
I invested heavily in pork belly futures. All right, man. This has been fun. I'm down to 2%. So
See ya.
This has been a Broken Toys studio production.
Yeah, still good.